Hi, this is Dimon, and you're watching Salesforce introduction using Java. So in this video, we have integrated with Salesforce using Java, and we have used REST API, get method and post method. We have performed Salesforce login, we have accessed some metadata of the Salesforce objects, and also we have performed the logout, which is access revoking of specific session token. So let's see, this is the demo of this application, what we are going to implement. So these are the three files, one is directory and two file. This is this is a bat file which will execute the jar file by calling the jar command, java space hyphen jar slash jar file name. So once it is executed, it will give you this screen. We have four operations: logout using post method, logout using get method, get all a subject list. So once you type this, command will be completed, and in the temp folder you will see one file, text file is created, which will store all the list of the objects including standard and custom object. So if we run the command one more time, you can see the command, once the command is completed, it will create the text file which will hold all the list of standard and custom objects list. So you can customize that accordingly later. Now, as I said that there are four commands: logout using post method, logout using get method, get all list of objects, and by. So if I perform logout now, so logout has been successfully done, logout using post method. Now if I try to run this one more time, the access has been revoked. I mean, session access has been revoked already, so it will say bad request. And if I try to find all list of our subjects, it will say unauthorized. So it's quite logical that once the access has been taken back, then you will be not able to connect using the same session token. Now if I perform logout using get method, REST API get method, it will say logout using get method has been successfully done. And if I try to perform the logout one more time using post method, it will say bad request because logout has already been done. Now if I try to get all list of all objects using this command, it will again say unauthorized. So it's logical. Now this is what we are going to implement. We have used Eclipse for that. So most of the cases the development is done on the Eclipse. So if you are using any web service, so you have to create one project in Eclipse. So we did, so SF connect project. Now in the project we are going to create one package, so one package with the same name. Okay, let's make it org.sfconnect. So this is the package. Now in this package we'll create the main class. Let's give a name of this main class as sfconnect main. Okay, as the name has to be starting with capital letter, so we shift this main at the front, so main connect, and we use the public static void main method to start the program. Now we define some variables here, some string variables which will hold the value for this program, for this application. So first username, then there has to be several variables as password, then grant service, login URL, client ID, client token. So login server URL would be login.salesforce.com for production, and for sandbox it would be test.salesforce.com. and here is the grant service, client ID, and another would be client secret. So let me explain what this grant service will do. So it's a type of parameters how the authentication will be done, something like that. Now here the username of your Salesforce org, the developer edition which you are using, and the password, you can use this in a command line, or you can develop a suitable interface using PHP, which will use the backend, which will use the Java in the backend, or Java library in the backend. Any kind of language you can use. Then you have to provide the grant service and this client ID and client secret. So client ID and client secret will help you to identify what application will be login to your Salesforce org. So this will be the separate production which will hold the client ID and client secret for this specific application, which will be the identifier for your application, so that if you are using any kind of Salesforce org ID, like you are using sandbox, so you can see the user's login history, that which application has been logged in. So here you provide the application name and email address. Now the API O authentication settings, here you need to provide the settings details. So you need to enable this and provide the callback URL as http login.salesforce.com/services/OAUTH2/callback. So this is the Salesforce provided callback URL, so that once it is logged in, it will redirect you to this address. And you need to provide the permission as full access, so that it can access all the details of your org, or you can perform the restriction accordingly. Now once you created this application in your production org or any specific developer edition org, it will help you to provide the consumer key and consumer secret. So here in this section you will find the consumer key, and which you just copy and paste it here, and the consumer secret, which can be obtained by clicking on this click reveal button. So that and also you can see that org, which from where I have obtained this client ID and client secret, is not the org which I am going to log in, this omadmin@codemania.com. So it's a unique identifier for your application. Now I will be storing the login access token and service URL like ap12 or ap11.salesforce.com, something like that, after logged in, whatever is the service URL. So in this array list, so I'm going to create the login result array or list of string, and here is I'm going to create one class which will store the login method, and once login it will return the access token and server URL. So this class has been created. Now in this class we are creating one method, public method, which will type is list of string, so that its return will be access token and server URL. Okay, so you need to import that here, this Java library, and you need to add one return. Currently I'm keeping is a null. Okay, now I need to pass all the details, username, password, all these above mentioned variables which holding specific value. So I'm calling this login method like this, creating one instance of this class and calling for this login method. Okay, it's a typo error. So just I copy this and paste it here. Okay, now the error is gone. So I need to pass all these variables: username, password, login server URL, grant service, all this here. So I type here like this. Alright, so I have all these details. Now I modify the class method like this by just clicking on this suggestion. It will add all these variables into as an argument. So now I have to define one list of name value pair which will be used to call the HTTP web service request using HTTP client. So all these username, password and all these details will be passed using this name value pair. So name value pair is nothing but it's a class which holds the value and a specific key. Now this name value pair, this class has been created by Apache. So if you go to just this URL, which will be available in the description of this video, just go to this URL and download HTTP components jar file from here. So it will download all the list of jar files which will help to perform the web service query, to send the web service request to Salesforce. So by just downloading it, you just have to extract it, and in the leaf folder you will see all the list of jar. So just copy those jar and create one ref-leave folder directory into the project file. In the project folder here, ref-leave, and paste those jar file here and copy the path location and go to the build by clicking on this project, build path, and in the add external jar option and paste that location and select all the jar. It's a multi-select option. Okay, let's just create one folder, that Apache HTTP client, so that you will help to understand that in this reference library, if I am going to add any other jar files, so what those jar files will be all about. Because if you add number of jar files, it will confuse you that for which purpose you are using these jar files. So the jar files has been added into this project, you can see from here. So just go to that, hover on this error, and you will see that you can import those class. Okay, so we have created one variable of name value pair which helps to store the key and its value so that we can send it using HTTP request. Now in the name value pair dot add, we create another variable as basic name value pair. Okay, and this is the key. We use it into the double quote. So this has been mentioned by Salesforce itself, that what would be the key and what would be the value. So key would be the username in small letter, and the same will be for password and other components also. So it would be password, then grant service, so it would be grant underscore type, and with the grant service, which is password. Previously we have obtained that, defined that into this place, into the as this variable. So grant type will be password, and here is the client underscore ID. So it would be the client ID which has been obtained from the Salesforce org, and this would be the client secret. So the same here, and this one is not required. So we have one name value pair created already. Now we are going to create one HTTP client which will help to send the request to Salesforce based on this name value pair and one request URL we are going to create. Okay, so the syntax is like this: HTTP client HC is equal to HTTP client builder dot create dot build. Okay, so it will create one HTTP client to send the request. Now we create one post request method. Okay, so HP request. So this HP request, post request, will be going to Salesforce by using this HTTP client class. Okay, client variable HC. Now HTTP post request will be sent to login server URL plus. Now this will be obtained from this link, understanding OAuth endpoint. So for authorization we use this URL. For token request authentication we use this, and for access revoking we use this URL. Okay, so authorization, like for example you are authorizing Google Drive to Salesforce, something like that. So authorizing a specific app or some redirecting to a specific URL. So it help you to use that URL. So here we are authenticating with using the token. So URL would be the service /OAuth /token. Okay, now in the post request we set the entity as new URL encode URL format entity. Encode format entity would be the name value pair, so that it will be something like, as the post request is sent using the ARL hit kind of process, so we need to convert the name value pair in a proper format. Okay, URL format. So this is the format that post request dot set entity as URL encoded name value pair. Okay, so it will just throw one exception here. If there are any exception, it will throw the unsupported format exception. Okay, then we create the response. So it's a variable which will hold the request has been sent and whatever response has been obtained. Okay, so we define one memory, allocate one memory for that, and now we are receiving the response. So it would be like response is equal to HC dot execute, okay, the request. is post request. Okay, now it will throw another, that if any protocol error, then it will throw the exception. Okay, so response is equal to this. So HTTP response has been obtained. Now for this response there is one status code which will identify that response has been successfully obtained without any error or there is some issue. So if the response is 200, then it's successful, it has been successfully executed. So we are storing the response code by calling this method, that response dot get status line dot status code, get status code. So it will obtain the status code from the response, that what kind of response has been obtained. So if you perform any authentication error or something like that, that you have typed wrong username, then this status code will be different, will not be 200. Okay, now if we try to run, we see that it is response code is showing as 400. Now I have corrected it, so let's proceed with next step. So we need to check the status code which is successfully login or not. Now it's working fine. Now in this step we check if status code is equal to as http status dot OK, because it's provide out of the box functionality or one static variable defined in this http status class, which value is 200. So whenever you will try to validate with received status code, you need to use this. Now this string results str, which is the string version of the response which has been received. So for that, to convert the response which has been received as HTTP response, if we want to convert it to string, we need to use this functionality, entity util dot to string, then response dot get entity. So by typing this, the response which is type is HTTP response will be converted to string format. Let's print the string. How does it look like? It would be a JSON string. Okay, so if we run this and we see that we have received the access token successfully with other parameters also. Now if we convert it into a proper JSON format, so if you go to this website and you can convert the JSON string to a specific JSON format, proper JSON format. So if you convert it, it will look like this. So it's a key and its value. So access token, instance URL, ID, token type, issued at, and the signature. All these parameters has been received in this response. So from this, we just need the access token and instance URL. So for that, what we are going to do, we need to use the JSON library. So it has been created by json.org. So you can just go to this website and download it, the source code from this GitHub. So for that, you just have to click on this clone and download zip, where one zip file will be downloaded, and by extracting this zip file, you can see all the Java files which can be used into this project. So for that we create one package name as org.json, and we just paste those Java files into this package. So each and every class, Java class, we can use them, okay, into our project. So here we create one JSON object of JSON class name as JSON or JS object is equal to null. Then we use that JSON object as JSON object, then new JSON tokener. So the functionality of JSON tokener is that it will help to read all the tokens from this J object. So with the next value, you can see it helps to get the key and its value and store it into this JSON object. So as you saw that JS object stores access token, instance URL, all these. So it will now have those key value pair, so that by parsing the key we can access the value. So now we are trying to access the access token, this X token, by providing the key as access underscore token and login instance URL which having key as this login instance URL underscore URL. Okay. So if we just pass that key instance underscore URL, we will access the JSON token as the instance URL provided by Salesforce itself. So it's something like CS1, CS4 or AP1, AP2. Now we are passing those values into this array list, like creating one temporary list. We pass those value and store into this array list the access token and the instance URL. So this access token would be the session ID which will be added into the first, and the instance URL which will be added into the second array list, so that we can access it in later. So this instance URL will be like NA14 NA. So firstly we we use the URL as login.salesforce.com, but after this authentication completed it will change to CS14 or NA14, something like that. So now we are going to create one static string variable as login access token. So this will help to store the login access token for future reference. And second one we are going to create is the login instance URL. Okay, so after login or login authentication successful, it will store the login URL as na14.salesforce.com or ap1.salesforce.com, something like that. And for sandbox it's something like the instance.salesforce.com, so it's something like CS1, CS2, CS3 or all these instance.salesforce.com. Now login access token which we have added into that list previously is available into the first, so we get 0, and for login instance URL we get into the from the array as first 1, so it would be like login result 1. Okay, So we have obtained the login access token and login access URL. Now we use one scanner to get the input from the user into the command line. So for that we use the scanner class, which will help to get the input into the command line or console. So for that the syntax is something like that: scanner is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay, so once the program is executed, so it will first get the login access token and login access URL, login instance URL. After that it will ask to enter the commands. That 4 commands we explained previously, that logout, login, get all objects, surl, all s objects list, and buy. So these 4 commands you need to type. So it will first show the list that these are the commands available, and you need to type the command into the command link. So the URLs are commands are something like this. First one is get all objects, got all s objects list. So if you type this, it will show you all the list of objects. I mean, it will store in a text file, and the remaining are something like this: logout, get, logout, post, and buy. So after that we run one while loop, so that the commands will be, I mean, console will ask the user to enter the commands again and again. So every time you execute one command, it will ask you to insert another command after first one is executed, completed successfully. So for that it will first ask insert command, then we take the command in a string format. Okay, so command is equal to scanner dot next line. So in the scanner, whatever it is typed will be stored into the command, I mean, until or unless the enter is pressed. Okay, then we create one string which will hold the result or message from the URL call in, I mean, the method which is executed, like get all a subject list, logout, or logout using get or post, something like that. Once those are executed successfully, it will send this callback message. Okay, so we create one router method to route all those commands to the specific Java method. So once any command is executed or command is typed and enter is pressed, it will take you to this router class. And in the router class we are using switch and case method or switch and case class to route the command to the specific method. Alright, so here we route the command to the specific routing method, passing the command as the parameter. Okay, so we go to the router class, and in the router class we also need the access token and the login instance URL, because using this we will be working on the same session, but if we try to log in again and again, that will create multiple session. Okay, so the process would be like, we first log in, then we execute the command like getting all the list of objects, and after that we revoke the access token. That means we perform the logout. Alright, so that the same session will not be valid again and again, because every time you log in and log out, then you are working on same session, I mean specific session. Now if we type bye by, then it will break the loop. Okay, and Java program will be exit successfully. So we break by typing by, so this is the option, it will break the loop. Now in the router we create the case and switch functionality. Okay, and to route to the specific method, we create another class as SF collections, which will contain all the methods for getting all the list of objects and performing logout. Okay, so it would be, the method type would be string, as it will return one message or result message after completing this execution or completing this method, because it might throw the error as well. So we are passing the method, passing the string after executing this method. Okay, now the same we need to get into this method as well as a parameter, because here we will be using this session ID and the login instance URL. Okay, so here first we need to create 4 methods here, because 3 methods, because first one is to get all the list of objects, second one is for logout using get method, and fourth one is the logout using post method. Okay, because REST API having post and get methods, so I am demonstrating you how to use them. And here we use one switch number. First we initialize it with 0, so the variable is like switch2. Now if switch2 is equal to command is equal to or equals to ignore case, so that if you type, if you perform any case mismatching, then it would not be create any problem. So if equals ignore case, get all list, not list, all S object list, then switch2 is equal to one. Okay, and the same is for logout and logout post, something like that. So switch2 will be 2, 3 and 4. So logout get, logout post, and this one is for buy, so switch to 4. Okay, and string callback message is equal to null, so that first we initialize the message. Okay, then we use the switch method as switch to. So once any integer is typed, it will redirect you to the specific case number. So we use the case. So it's like case 1. If user perform command as get all s object list, it will switch you, it will set the switch to variable as 1, and once 1 is switched, switch to variable is 1 is set, then it will send you to the case 1. Okay, so case 1, here we are calling this method sf collections dot get all the list of objects. Okay, and we are passing the login access token and login instance URL. So it will receive the callback message once the method is completed, method execution is completed. So we will do the same for remaining 3. So for this we call logout method, this logout using get. The same we are passing the login instance URL and access token, and this is for logout using post. Okay, and here we just send the callback message as goodbye. Okay, so that once user type buy, it will display buy, and if any error with the command, then it will throw the it will send the callback message as invalid command, because always with invalid command it will set the switch to variable to 0. So default value would be, default case will be called. Now in this method, what we are going to do, we are going to create the REST API call to access the objects of Salesforce using HTTP web service request. Okay, so here is the link to fetch the object details or list of objects from Salesforce. You need to send the web service request to this URL. Okay, here. So to get a list of objects, you need to call to this web service address. Okay, so first we set the request URL as login instance URL plus this service data v37 objects. Okay, so it would be like this. So if we send the web service request to this URL, it will return back all the list of objects. Okay, so along with this we need to pass the header also, so that I will show you. So first we create one HTTP client which will help to send the request, web service request, to this URL, request URL as mentioned. Now to create one HTTP client, we need to use this class HTTP client builder dot create dot build. So if we call this method, it will create one HTTP client. Okay, and as you can see with this URL, there are number of headers as authorization bearer token. So authorization will be done by this access token, which will be added into the header. So underscore h means it will send to the header, and in the below you can see there is no request body required. Okay, so we create one get method for this HTTP request. So it would be like HTTP get, we have to use the HTTP get class, and here is the request which has to be sent. So request has to be sent to this URL, so we have to use this new HTTP get and the request URL. So we need to send the request get request to this URL. So as a return we will receive all the list of objects. Okay, now we need to add the header to this URL, to this request. So it would be like authorization, then colon, then bearer, and there is one space. Okay, that you need to be careful with, very much careful with. Okay, so add header, then in the header we use this authorization as a key, and we need to add the value by typing comma and bearer, then there is one space, you need to mention this, and the token. Okay, this access login access token. So using this the authorization will be done. Okay, so that's why you should not share this login access token of your production org or any sensitive environment, from any sensitive environment to anyone. So that will create security breach. I mean, they can access all the data, organization information, everything. Okay, with this authorization token. So HTTP, we create one HTTP response to receive the response of the request we are sending. So response is equal to request dot HC client. So using this client we will execute the request. So HC dot execute, then the request, this request. Okay, so we need to add the exception, we need to add the throws exception here, because there will be some exception, possible exceptions if there is any error. Okay, now whatever response will be received, it would be as a HTTP response. So we create one, we need to change it to a specific string format, and first we need to check whether the request has been completed successfully or not by validating with the status code. As I explained before, that status code should be equal to https status dot ok hc underscore ok, so that we can understand, we can validate that request has been completed successfully. Okay, so actually its value is 200, but still we need, in a proper formatting we have to use that. So first we validate that this HTTP request status code is equal to HTTP status dot ok, sc ok, okay, sc underscore ok, okay, status code. Okay, SC means status code. Okay, so string, now we convert the response which has been received to a string format, because the response will be received in a JSON format, so we first have to stringify it. Okay, so how do we do that? We use the entity util class to convert the response to a string format. Okay, so there is one method toString which will convert the request status to, I mean the response, to a perfect string format. So response dot get entity. Alright, so request response has been received. Let's see how the response looks like. So we run the program. Let's run the program. Let's execute it, and we need to see how does it look like. So the program still running. Now we insert the command and we see that command has been completed and this response has been received. So there is one encoding in which encoding the response has been received, then what is the query batch size, and then the main response, that S objects list. Now if we simplify the JSON, whatever response has been received into the console, if we stringify it, we see that it looks like in a proper output format. Okay, it is taking time actually. Here, so first is encoding, then max batch size 200, then all the list of objects, S objects. Okay, so first you see that active variable, all this. Okay, let's modify in a proper format. Here it goes. You can see that the response which has been received, it's in a proper JSON format here, and this contains number of key and its value. Okay, here, so first, so these are the all the list of S objects and its attributes, like we can access name and other variables like queryable or activable, creatable, custom, or something like that. All these others parameters value also we can access from the response. Now we will be working with this response string, where we'll store the response, I mean we'll convert the response string in a specific JSON object format by using this method JSON object. Then we use the response string, and here, so it has now been converted in a JSON object. Now we'll be working with this JSON object. Okay, now we need to access this value. So this S object which has been received, it contains list. I mean its values is its value having a list. So S object is key and its value is list. So it's a heterogeneous type because it first one contains key and value, which is string and string, then second one which is also string and string, and third one is string and second one is string of string is the key and value is the map of string and string, because it also contains attributes. Here you can see this is string and these are the map, activable false. So activable is the map which is key and false is the value. So it's a heterogeneous type. So we will access those value which will be the JSON array, which will contain a list of key values, and the key would be the the values we are getting based on the key as S objects here. Now we'll store those objects name in a list of string. So we are typing here list of string S objects name. So it would be a string. Okay, here. Alright, now we are going to use the JSON objects in the next by running one for loop. So for loop, what for loop will do, it will iterate through each and every key and value and will access the name as key, and it will obtain the value of it. Okay, so we are running the for loop, the JSON array here. For example, there are 70 objects, so JSON array length will be the 70, and we iterate through each and every content of JSON array. So first one, for example, one object's parameter, so we get first. Now the first one, we get the first JSON objects because JSON array contains all the list of JSON objects. Okay, so we first get the JSON objects, and in that JSON objects we get the key, the entity as name, the key as name and its value. Okay, so let's print out how does it look like if we are able to get the name or not. Here we first type the commands this, and we will print out all the list of objects which is expected. Okay, we can see all the list of objects here. Alright, here, so it's iterating through each and every JSON array, content of JSON array, which is JSON object, and in that JSON object we get the entity of name, we get the entity whose key is name. Okay, we get the value of that entity by typing get and the string as name. Okay, now we need to write those name in a specific file. So for that we create one method to store those list of names in a file. So for that we first get the current path where it is working, the directory, to make the program more dynamic. Then we create one variable of class path. So this will help to create the to create the file which will contain all those list of objects from the list of string. So you can directly write the list of string content to a specific file, text file. Okay, so we create one path here. So current path plus we create one temp folder into the working directory. Here this temp folder. Okay, and we create one text file, so it would be the file path. So list of objects dot txt. All right, now here file dot files is equal to new file. Okay, this file, so it will help to create the file. So first we'll create the file, then we'll write the list of string to that file. Okay, so this is the process is going to be. Now so next command will be the file dot create new file. So after executing this method, it will create the text file blank. Now we are going to write the list of string to that file. Okay, so write, then this path, then content, and the then writing option. Okay, so it's in this method we use this path, then the content, this content, and the option of writing the file. So it would be the character set as default character set. Okay, so once this is executed, the file will be created. So let's create the temp folder here. Otherwise it will not find the directory to write the file. Okay, so once this command is executed, it will create a file with all the list of objects name. Okay, we delete it. Now here we need to return as command completed. Okay, else if this is status code not is equal to https status or status is equal to 401, then system we will print the reason of the response error. So it will obtain from this get status line dot message, the reason phase, which will return what is the reason of failure. Okay, so we get all the list of objects here. So the program is working correctly. All right, Now we use the logout using get method. So in this method, first we need to create the HTTP client to send the request for the logout, which is revoking the access token for this session. So we create the HTTP client by calling this method, build method, which will build the HTTP client to send the web service request to Salesforce to a specific URL. Now we create the get request here, hg request is a variable name, is equal to http get, new http get, okay. Then the request URL. So this request URL has been mentioned here in the Salesforce to understand the authorization endpoint. To revoking access, we need to send the request to this URL with the access token, okay, here. So the format would be like passing the token into the URL. So token is equal to this token. So if you hit this URL by calling the get method, it will revoke the access token, the session ID from the Salesforce, and you will not be able to perform any request or any operation based on that session ID, okay. So we just have to create one HTTP response here. We create one response variable which will hold the HTTP response. So logout response is equal to this. We need to implement this logout because every time we perform any operation, we always have to revoke the session ID, as we do in the browser, that we perform the logout, okay. So it will always have the status code for any HTTP request. Always there will be status code which can be obtained by using the it would be get status line. Dot get status code. So it will access the status code from the response. So we have to validate that status code is valid as HTTP status. This is equal to HTTP status dot sco, okay. So once it is validated successfully, we will print out that logout has been successfully done. Okay. So logout will be successfully done by calling this method. Then if the status code is not okay, then we will print out as the status message that will be obtained from the reason phase, I mean from the response. Okay, here we print out here we print out as this login response, which will be obtained from login response, that get status line dot reason phase. What is the reason of this error? So it will print out. The same we obtained that once the logout is done, then if we try to call the same method, then it will say that unauthorized or bad request, something like that. So it will print that error. So first we get the list of objects, then we perform the logout get. Okay, so logged out successfully. This is coming because we have not set any response yet. Now if we try to get all list of objects, it will say unauthorized. Okay, so that is the reason phase. So we need to change this null to command completed successfully, so that it will, this null will not come again. The same we need to add here also, so that we don't forget anymore. Now if we run again and try to log out, log out successfully. If we try to again, that it will say bad request. Okay, it's working fine. Now we need to implement the same for logout using post method. So here we create the HTTP client again, and by calling this method HTTP client builder dot create dot build, so it will create the HTTP client. Then we need to create one string, request string, that on which URL we are going to send this post request. Now post request is different from get request format, because in post request you need to perform, you need to send the parameters in a dictionary format or name value pair format that we did previously for the login method. So we need to create one name value pair here, list of name value pair. So we create one variable name value pair is equal to new list of array list first we import the class, and it would be array list. Okay, now in the name value pair we need to add the token, and we need to create one HTTP post request here. So it would be new HTTP post in a string. So URL should be request URL. So if we hit that URL with this name value pair as a parameter, the access token will be revoked successfully. So in the name value pair we add new basic name value pair, and here the key would be the token and value would be the login login access token. Okay, so if we need to now format this name value pair in a proper way. So before that, we just create one HTTP response variable. Okay, logout response is equal to hc dot execute the HTTP request. Now here we have to add the name value pair by adding set entity new URL encoded from entity here the parameters. So here the name value pair is formatted properly. Okay, now it will throw the unsupported encoding exception. So the name value pair is properly URL encoded and added into the request. Now if we execute the request, it will revoke the access token. Okay, here we are encoding the URL and adding into the request. Okay, as you can see, it's unsupported exception. Okay, actually unsupported exception inherits IO exception, so it would not be problem. Now we are receiving the response. Now as same, we have to validate the status code and we have to perform all these steps. So it's same, we just paste here and we try to execute. Okay, now if we run the program, so it has been logged in successfully. Now get all the list of objects. First we delete it. The command is completed successfully. Okay, I'm mentioning different directory actually, so it would be in temp folder here. If we delete this and again run the program and try, it is creating this list of string here in a accessing all the list of standard and custom objects. Okay, now here we can modify how we are going to extract the list of objects. We can set this one as if this ends with __c, then add the value into the list. Okay, so that it will access only the custom objects, and if the name is account, also. So it will add account into the list and list of custom objects. Now if we try to execute the command again, and try to access all the list of objects, we see the case is added. Now there is some problem with the account, so it would be like this, equals. Okay, now let's see if it is working fine. Now if we execute this command, it will create the file, and we can see now account and case is added. Okay, now it's working fine. Alright, so only one custom object is created into that org, which I have mentioned. That's why it's adding those two objects. One is standard objects, which is account, and another is custom object case. Now if we remove this and try to execute, we can see that in previously also it was extracting only custom object as case, and remaining are all standard objects. Here see only one custom object, all are remaining standard objects. So it's working fine. Now we perform the logout using get. So logged out successfully. Okay, now if we try to log out again, then it will say bad request. Now if we try to get list of objects again, it will say unauthorized, because session ID or access token has already been revoked. Okay, now if we run the program one more time to test the post method, if it is working fine, so you can see using post method it has been successfully logged out. Okay, now why this has been logged out twice? Yeah, it's already okay, everything is fine. Maybe there is some issue, because I tried to log out again and again very fast, so that could be the reason. So if we try to run again and perform the logout using post and wait for a minute and enter again, it will say bad request, because it has been already logged out. If we try to use the logout using get, it will say also bad request. If we try to get list of objects, it will say unauthorized. Okay, bye. So it's working fine. So first what we do, we log in, which will redirect the user to this method where we are creating a name value pair with all these parameters, and it's returning access token and instance URL. Then it is asking to enter the command. Where you enter the command, it will route you to a specific method, and if you type by, it will end the program. So in the router, it will redirect you to the specific case number where you are redirecting to specific methods, these methods. So in the method, you are creating one HTTP client and sending the request to that URL which has been mentioned, and checking the status, request response status. If it is okay, then you are decoding the response result. You are converting the response result to a specific string, and you are converting that string into a specific JSON object, where you are parsing that JSON object and iterating the JSON object and accessing all the list of objects name. Now for logout using get also, you are sending the web service request to this URL, and once the URL is hit with the specific access token, the access is revoked for that access token. Okay, and you are being logged out successfully. Alright, the program has been completed. Now we export the program to a runnable jar here, and we are exporting into a specific location here. We are going to create one new folder, and in this folder we are extracting this jar, and temp file I am sending there, and we are saving it. This is the name. Okay, and package all the required libraries into a single jar folder. Now if we go to that folder, we see one jar has been created. You can see the size is 2 MB almost, because it has been added all the list of libraries into a single jar, that's why. And we are creating one batch program, bat file, which will execute the jar file here, and we are adding it into here, so that first it will navigate you to that directory and it will run the jar file. Okay, there is some issue with the commands, I think. Because I typed here differently, it is coming differently. Okay, the reason is whenever we did the export, we selected the different jar file, because it is important to select the proper main class here. So from here you can see the list of main class in the specific package will be available. So if you select yes, it will extract the jar file. Okay, now if we try to run it, you can see after login you will get all the list of methods here. Now it's coming properly. Now if you execute the command, it will get all the list of S objects here. Okay, if you execute one more time, it will create the file. Now if you perform the logout, it will say invalid command. If you perform with correct command, it will say successfully logged out. And if you do the same, it will say bad request, because session has already been revoked back. Now if you perform using post, it will say bad request, because it has been done using the get method already. Okay, so these are the useful links which will be available into the description of this video. If you performing any testing, you can easily use those link for the reference. And also after login, you can see the client application which has been used to perform the login is available here into the login history. Okay, if you go to the user, you can see this is the client application has been used. Thanks.